One. The mic is hot. What's up, guy?
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for
Oh
having me on this
God,
really
you can't.
popular show.
Don't do this, dude. You just talk, man. What's going on?
Wow, you
What are you up to
squeezed me
today,
in.
dude?
I can't believe it. I can't believe I made it onto the show. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful.
Oh God, dude, I want to hear about this, man. So you had a lot of what's reservations about being recorded and put out there for all 10 people to listen to on this planet.
No,
What do you
I don't
think?
know. Reservations, more like nerves. I'm nervous about
Right.
people listening to me, you know?
Why, dude? What about?
Who knows if I
What's the
have
concern?
who knows if I have something valuable to say?
Who knows if you have something valuable to say?
Like if what I say will bring value to anyone. It just feels like
Oh, it definitely would, dude.
you think so?
Um, I know so, dude, because I wouldn't have invited you on, and I wouldn't really care to keep on asking you if I didn't think that. And also, I don't think I'd be really friends with you if I didn't think that either. So it goes more. It stems from more than one place. But dude, you definitely have perspective to offer, and not even that. You're also you're great. You're a great schmoozer, dude. So I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be entertaining. And even if let's say it's not the most, it's not the Jordan Peterson informative of all podcasts. I still think you can cover, you can make quite a bit of difference, dude. Cover quite a bit of ground.
Well, first off, thank you. And secondly, I'm happy you brought up Jordan Peterson because maybe I get to be the contrarian here. I'm not by no means a liberal or left leaning at all, but I do not I can't stand listening to Jordan Peterson.
In
I
terms of what?
just everything. First, like when he speaks, my mind shuts off, and then I'm like he probably has something of substance that he's saying right now. Maybe I should re-listen. And it's like he's almost like talking in a way that he's trying to sound more sophisticated. At least that's the way I feel. And my brain just shuts off when I'm listening to Jordan Peterson speak.
It's so interesting. I
And
mean, my, my, I actually, so I agree. I don't love his public speaking, even though I don't, and it's crazy because he made a career on going to these, on touring and on being a professor and on doing these shows and his podcast now, he's been getting crazy people on. It's been exploding, but I can't. I think. Do you ever read any of his books? Do you ever read 12 Rules to Life or
yeah, I
anything like
tried
that?
reading 12 Rules for Life and I had the same experience.
Really? Because
Yeah.
the books I found much more palatable, much easier to process. I taught it to my high school students actually, or I taught part of it to parts of it to my high school students.
Yeah, I remember the
Um,
part with the lobster. Yeah, it's good stuff.
what? Yeah, yeah. What did you? What it's too. It's too.
I don't remember what it
Um,
was. Maybe it was just written in a way that wasn't digestible for me. I think that's just him in general is like you have to be actively listening and maybe rereading or re-listening in order to digest the content.
yeah, yeah. I think that. I also think that what he'll do, which I don't even think necessarily is a bad thing, but what he'll do is he'll use something as a metaphor. Again, like you want to talk about like the lobster thing, like to stand up back with your shoulders straight, right? Like he
Yeah.
doesn't start off with saying it's really important to start to stand up back with your shoulders straight. What he starts talking about are lobsters and the way that their chemical makeup works and the way that their brains work and by this and without any kind of context, you might lose a bunch of people along the way that could have been interested in what the end goal of what you're trying to say was,
Right.
but
Like
your metaphors are
just
so
get to the
obscure.
point. Right. I don't
Yeah,
really know the
exactly.
chemical composition of the whole thing. Just get to the point, tell me why it would be beneficial to do it. I hear that. Yeah, it could be. Did you see,
Right.
speaking of JP, did you see he had Musk on? I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so funny. I love both of them. I love Jordan Peterson. I love Elon Musk. Um, I can't listen. I think both. I don't like. I mean, it's hard for me to listen to them speak. I've listened to Elon on Rogan. I've listened to him on Lex Friedman a couple of times, and I think there's one other platform that he was on that I listened to him. Maybe Tucker Carlson. I don't know. And and he it's hard for me to listen to him. Like I know he's got brilliant things to say, and I read about him, and and I know he does incredible things. But it's just I don't find him very engaging. I think his voice is a little monotone for me, and the combination of him with Jordan Peterson is just it was very difficult for me to even make my way through the half an hour that I listened to.
Oh, I hear that. Yeah, I was actually talking to Izzy about just like public speakers in general, like, and let me know what you think about this. I said it might be a hot take, but I said if and not to mention names, right? I
Yeah.
won't mention names here, but I said if people are gonna get up in front of a crowd and take up everyone's time. So let's say even if you're speaking for a minute, but you're in a crowd of 30 people, so you're
Hmm.
taking 30 minutes of time. So I said it should be some sort of a requirement for you to not only deliver good content, but the way that but the delivery should be good too. Like if you're gonna get up there against people's will, so to speak, and just because that's the way that the system works, that you have someone speaks in front of a crowd of people, I think that there should be some sort of a requirement almost that like you did some sort of speaking class and you
Yeah.
know how to deliver a message because you're taking up people's time. Um, and time is valuable. My time is valuable, and I don't want to. I don't want to waste it by having someone like spew something to me. So that was just my take.
I
But
think it's true. I think I don't know if there's really. I think it's true. I don't know if there's really a.
hello.
Hi. Yeah. Sorry, we got disconnected for a second. Um, I don't know if there's necessarily a way to grade to quantify someone's public speaking skills. That okay, you're speaking for a minute in front of 30 people. That's got to be 30 minutes worth of valuable content like that. But
No, but there should be a minimum bar, like a threshold that you should
totally,
pass
totally,
in
totally.
or here's I listened to, let's call it a lecture. I listened to a lecture and this lecturer said something that was great. He's like, if you get up there, and he's a great speaker, like one of my favorite speakers to listen to, and he says, you get up there and you hear this da 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 da. He's like, that's a melody that will put you to sleep. He's like, the way that I learned to public speak is by listening to comedians. He's like, there's no, like you don't expect where he's gonna go and what the punchline is gonna be or what the message is gonna be, and that there should be some sort of a and just like very basic stuff. For example, I took a public speaking course in college because it was a requirement, but even changing tone and talking slower, and then talking a little bit faster, and then louder, and then a little bit quieter, like all those things, just
Yeah, it makes a
really basic
huge
stuff.
difference.
It engages the audience more, and you know how to grab your audience. So even like, I don't know, an hour of public speaking courses that someone should do before they get up there and take people's time. I think it'd benefit
Yeah,
everybody.
so I 1,000% agree to the extent that part of my, because part of my English classes that I teach for ninth, 10th, and 11th grade was for the last couple of years. I was like, part of the English class, the prerequisite is to be a public speaker. Like it's to speak, it's to obviously to comprehend, it's how to articulate yourself. And then part of articulating yourself is, both on paper and in person. And part of being in person also means in front of a crowd. So everyone had to do a 5 minute public speech in front of the class, which some you could obviously tell right away that some kids are going to be more naturally inclined towards that, and some are a little bit less. But I mean, all it took, I think, was one or two tries from each kid for everyone to just get way better. And I think a lot of people don't have experience. I also think the art of public speaking has developed a little bit also. Like it used to be, like you could get up there with a piece of paper in front of you and read from the paper, "Hello, esteemed friends and family." And now I think also it's so funny that you brought up the stand-up comedy because because stand-up evolved in a very unique way too. Like if you listen to a comic from like the 80s or the 90s, and then you listen to one of the Netflix shows from today, or whatever it is, like the whole art just completely flipped on its head, and the way that you present yourself in front of in front of everyone is so different. Now you're storytelling. You almost have like a build up. You could have a 10-15 minute bit with little jokes in it, but everything stays connected within the bit, and the whole thing gets brought together full circle. And like that's the art of it now. It used to be just a lot of one-liners or a lot of impressions or a lot of poking, self-deprecating, poking fun at yourself. And there are comedians that still do that, but you could see how it changed. So I think that public speaking changed too. You have to, like you said, you got to get up. You got to. I told them, I grade them based on their body language, based on their content, and based on their on the way that they actually speak. Um, and combining those three aspects is how they get their grade. So if someone's stiff and standing up there and just looking down at the paper, he may have good content and speak clearly, but he wouldn't get that. You'd probably get like a 70, 75. Someone's walking around, someone's making eye contact with students, someone's smiling or making jokes, or at least just you know adding a little bit of flourish and personality to the speech. That goes a really long way, and it even compensates a lot of times for bad content. I mean, a good speaker could not even have anything of so much of value to say, but because the way that they're presenting it, you walk away, you're like, oh, nice, and then then you think about like what they said, and you're like, the content was okay, but he spoke so well. That's what happens a lot.
Right. It's an interesting point. Like that you said that. Now that you said that out loud, it got me thinking. Like, if the content was terrible, but the speaking was good, I feel like at least then it would be a good waste of time because I didn't come out with anything substantial. But if the content was good, but the delivery was awful, then it would be a complete waste of time. Like there was no benefit because I didn't get the content and it was not entertaining. So I was just bored and I didn't absorb anything. So it sounds like it's more important the way that you deliver the message than the actual message.
Right, because if you deliver the
I don't,
message the wrong way, the message itself gets lost as well.
yeah, or yeah,
Yeah, and then and
it's
then you
just
hire
not.
someone else to say it, or you stick to writing, or you don't say anything, I guess. But oh, dude, you public spoke recently, right?
I was supposed to, yeah, I was supposed to, but they didn't end up
Oh
doing
yeah.
it. An interesting turn of events. So I was supposed to public speak for a minute at this networking
Hmm.
thing, and then my boss sent me a message like, "Hey, I spoke with some people, and they said, and these people suggested that I speak." And then I didn't get any clarity until the night of this actual networking event, and then like I didn't know if I was going to speak or my boss was going to speak. And then by the time the networking event happened, they didn't have anyone
Oh no.
speak. So like nobody spoke from any company. Yeah, I don't, it was a little disorganized, but I guess it was whatever. I would have spoken for a minute. I would have been fine,
How
but
did you
I would have
prepare at all
preferred
for it
not
or
to.
no?
No, not at all.
You would have just winged a minute.
Well, he didn't tell me if I was going to speak or not. So I just assumed that I wasn't going to speak. I was going to use that to my advantage. Like, you didn't tell me I was going to speak, so I didn't prepare anything.
Oh
So you
yeah,
made a
you could
big
probably
fool of
shave
me.
off 10-15 seconds by saying something like that. By the way, pretty easy to do.
No, that's not what I
Oh
mean. I mean, I was if the night came and he would have come to me like, by the way, you're speaking, I would have been like, you didn't like confirm with me that I was going to, and also I didn't prepare anything. So,
yeah, but I
so
think you
maybe,
could. I think you could have pulled it off though. I mean,
yeah, probably. I probably could have pulled it off. Yeah, speaking for a minute, I feel like shouldn't be that difficult, but then again, it's been a while since I spoke
yeah,
publicly.
the time really
You
creeps
do it.
away.
You do it often.
Sorry.
You do it often.
I used to more. I mean, I don't know if you consider teaching public speaking, but I definitely used to more. There's two. We actually we learned one of the reasons why it's important to change your tone and change the way that you're speaking while you're speaking. Danny Kahneman, who just died this year, is an Israeli Nobel Prize winning psychologist. He wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. Do you ever hear of it?
Yeah, of course. I didn't know it was written by an Israeli
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. And Danny Kahneman I believe he was a Holocaust survivor, came from a family of Holocaust survivors. and he moved to Israel. He became a psychologist, and he spent his life with a guy named Amos Tversky, and they were studying decision making and how. And I think that until that point, economics or the economic theory was predicated on the fact that people make rational decisions. And he made the argument that not only are people extremely irrational in their decision making, but they could be influenced to their behavior could be influenced subconsciously, whether they realize it or not. And part of the way that this works, he explained, was he'd break down the way that our brain functions into two systems. System one is automatic. If I ask you what two plus two is, you know the answer already. If I ask you what street you grew up on, you would tell me. You wouldn't have to think very hard about it. And it's almost like immediate memory. If you need a walk, you don't think to yourself, "Okay, I got to get up and take a walk now," unless you're exceptionally tired, right? And then system two is calculated and more organized. So if I asked you, what's 15 times 12, you might, if you're really good at math, you get it right away. But if not, then you have to stop and you have to do that whole little like math thing in your head, and you figure, okay, carry the five, carry the two times two, you carry that one over, okay, and then you try to get an answer. That second type of thinking is called system two, um, and the way that our brains work is that
Right.
our brains are lazy, and we inherently don't want to work. And so when we detect patterns that we feel like we could just go,
Fram, it's going in and
oh, is
out.
it?
I don't know if it's going in and out with me too.
No, you faded for like 3 seconds earlier. Is it still going in and out? Hello? Hello, hello?
Yeah, it was going in and out
Can
a
you hear
little
me
bit.
now?
Yeah, it seems better now.
Okay, we'll have to listen back before I put it out, see what see how it sounds. But anyway, so he said that. So where did I lose you?
Um, okay, you were saying that there's a system of thinking about like when you do a complicated math
Right,
problem.
that'd be system two, something that requires the more analytic response, and then system one would be more of an instinctual response, right? And something that you
Right.
could kind of trust yourself on. So it's a lazier system, and but it works to fill most of the things that we need day to day, right? So because most of your day is not really made of very complicated decision making, it's kind of based on more of a routine, and you can kind of break out of that routine, but you find it tiring if you have a day of of like everyone's system too. The analytical part of them has a certain mental budget, and you could expect you could run out of effort, and then when you do, it makes it harder to make those kind of harder thoughtful decisions and think that kind of way. So, for example, even the act of jogging, if you are jogging and you're forcing your body to be in that pace for half an hour, and then an hour later, when you finish jogging and it was really hard, you're going to try to hold yourself back from eating some cake. You might find you're probably going to find it harder to resist that piece of cake because you've already expended the analytical part of your brain that requires you to have discipline and hold back from it. If that makes sense.
Interesting.
So so
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of what so part of what
Fire.
happens also is that when people speak monotone, we don't detect any new content that we'd have to pick up because it's almost as if when someone's speaking in one tone the whole time, they're turning off everyone's brain because they're just paying attention to the fact that it's all the same tone. And then when you say something unexpected, or if you just shout in the middle of a presentation, or you start whispering, or you pause, or anything like that, then it breaks up the pattern, and people's brains the system two, which is paying attention and processing information, starts perking up and notices a break in the pattern and says, "Oh, why'd the person pause? Why'd the person raise their voice right now? Let me pay attention to what it is that they're saying and see if I can figure something else out about it." So, um, so the re- so even just a huge part from the way that our brains work of public speaking is about changing up tone, is about laughing, is about giving a pause and giving some time for the content to breathe, or for the material to process in people's heads. And then when you pause for a second, or when you create that little shift in that little shift in the presentation, our brains process it in a much more productive way. So that's the other key to public speaking, I guess, and that's the way that our brain work with it.
So interesting. Like, it's a mechanism for grabbing attention, right? Like, I don't remember where I saw this, but or maybe it was a friend that shared it with me. That said that nowadays you can't count like 2 seconds from, like, if you're watching a movie, you couldn't count 2 seconds before a cut is made in like the angle or some sort of cut in a movie. Whereas if you watch a movie from decades ago, you could have takes that were 5, 10 seconds long before there is a cut in the angle. But it's especially apparent in children's TV. I don't show my kids Coco Melon, but if you look at Coco Melon, dude, it's like like a fraction of a second changes first of all the bright colors. And the bright colors I think is I don't know why, but I don't like it. I don't think it's good for my kids to be so exposed to such vibrant and entertaining things because then everything will easily bore them. But the Cocomelon show, for example, the takes are so quick. It's so like attention grabbing. It's so hard to move your eyes off of the screen. It keeps you glued. But I guess that's kind of like what you explain is like the psychology behind why that happens.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that the guy won the Nobel Prize for economics, right? Because people like Netflix and people like Apple and people like Facebook or Meta or whatever it is. They're using it. They've studied this and they know perfectly well. I mean, there's no, they invest quite a bit of money into the best way to capture people's attention for the most amount of time, and
Right.
and if you can start from childhood and you could start by getting, I mean, time spent on these apps is so valuable for them, for especially because in the last couple of years, it's not just about streaming subscribers, it's about time spent on the app and time spent watching the apps. So because they moved to advertising tiers, and so for an advertising company, Netflix has to go up to them and say, listen, we have, an average of 3 hours a day of watching per household, and so so that means you can push your content to X amount of people for 3 hours a day, and that's worth an insane amount of money to the ad companies. Whereas, and so Netflix is trying, or all these companies, like if they have an ad tier, their job is to keep you glued to the screen for as long as possible. And it's actually, I just got this book, and you should definitely. I mean, I just started it, but I've listened to the author, speak on Huberman and on Lex Friedman on Rogan. Was Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book called The Anxious Generation. Do you ever hear of it?
No,
So he
never.
just published it. It
I'm gonna
just
look it
came
up.
out, dude. Dude, it is. He basically makes the argument that the phone and the front-facing camera has destroyed the mental health of, I guess, more than a generation at this point, but at least a generation of human beings. Um, and he basically actually starts the story in the 80s where kids stopped playing with each other, stopped playing in the streets, where everyone was getting nervous about kidnappers and predators, and or maybe people have been moving to cities, or I guess maybe potentially less. I don't know if it makes the case about where they're located, although I'm sure it makes a big difference. Um, but the fact that kids, prior to 1980, would just grow up, bicycle riding through the street, making friends, meeting people, going on adventures, going on trips, even little kid stuff.
When? Did you say
Sorry,
1980s? Did you say
prior to the
1980s?
80s, yeah. In the 80s,
Prior. Dude, I was running outside my house all day, every day
that
in
you're
in the
right,
early
but that so
2000s.
yes, not that people didn't. I grew up like that too, but we grew up in the suburbs, and I don't, and, in these tiny little isolated communities. But I mean, if you imagine if you're raising your kid in Manhattan, you're not going to let your kid just wander around outside. You're not going to let your 10-year-old take a subway by themselves. Or at least I wouldn't think so. Especially today.
Right.
And basically his argument is, that socially we're not developing, and then we're being absolutely flooded with with especially as we're developing, going through through maturity and puberty, and as our brains are developing, we're getting flooded with these addictive, you know, this addictive content and this feedback of the likes or the dislikes or the shares or the retweets or whatever it is serves uh, to give us false what's the word for it, rewards, I guess, right? Like you're rewarded for how many people like your post,
Right.
you're rewarded for how many people think your picture looks good or not. And so these are kind of, you're getting rewarded and compensated for things that aren't really grounded in anything, and then so we're actually losing an integral skill. We're becoming a lot more anxious and a lot more a lot less healthy overall. And it's called
Yeah.
Anxious Generation. I'm reading it right now. I'm the first chapter into it, but it's I think you're doing your kids a huge favor by not letting them watch, Cocomelon or TV for the most part, right? They usually don't watch.
Well, we don't have a TV in the house, but I let them watch on my computer. And yeah, I try to limit it to, and again, I don't have a source for this, but I feel like it just makes sense that the shows that I prefer them watching are ones that have those like dull colors, not extremely vibrant, not those neon colors. So usually what that means are shows that were created in early 2000s, late
But they got some
90s.
great content from
So
then.
like yeah, like Magic School Bus, dude. They love Magic School Bus and those types of shows. They really like it. And then on top of that, like the messaging in them, I know is a good message because it hasn't yet been contaminated by the woke mind virus.
Right.
So I don't need to worry about it. But I want to jump on a point that you made because I've been you know Kill Tony, right? We talked
Yeah,
about it.
sure.
So I was watching Kill Tony by my friend Alad's last night, and I had this thought the first time I watched Kill Tony, which was a few weeks ago, and then again last night, is that the people that get called up to do their stand-up bit, like from the random selection, are usually people that are socially off in one way or another. And it was like this is so interesting to me that the people that get up there almost, I would say like 90% of the time they have some sort of, they're off socially, whether it's Asperger's, whether it's a guy who's literally who gets up there and he says like he's mentally retarded, but they invite him back over as like as a
Hmm.
regular. But these people are really off, and I think that's, it's not like they're not like the exception. You know, I think they are the rule. And I think because people are so accustomed to interacting, like you just said, they're interacting with bots, with fake people behind a profile picture, really. And then you're exposed to the real world, and like now you're forced to socialize as humans always have socialized before. And so it comes out in like this awkward, almost like mechanical way, and you don't know what to do with yourself. And props to them for getting up there, but I think that those are the people that can get up there are the ones that don't have the shame to get up there because they can't read social cues. So it's like,
You think
you get what
so?
I'm
I mean,
saying?
that's a very it's a very cool take. I never thought about it like that. Um, I don't know that
No,
so
there are those ones that get up there
I
that
don't know
are
that I
good.
disagree. How much do you think is attributed to the fact that the kind of that, and I don't know really anything about this at all, because I'm pretty new to the whole comedy scene world, whatever. I don't know what kind of, I think comedy in general tends to attract an odder audience, because you have to think a certain, you know, wacky kind of way, and in a creative way, in a really really great way, in a smart way for sure. Because I mean, when these guys come up with these jokes, and you're like, it's so smart how you put those two together, and like how you make that correlation. Um, but I think that comedy also tends to just attract odd people, although there definitely is a massive drop off in what in people's skill. I mean, if you go to the city and you like, or you're walking around a coffee shop and you look at someone below the age of 25 or 30 and you say, "Hey, how are you?" Then watch how quickly they might fall apart. They don't know what to do with themselves. I mean, and all you're doing is just saying hi. And it's happened to me too. I mean, I actually a huge problem that I had growing up in high school was that. I because I got texting at probably seventh or eighth grade. Um, and this kind of I mean, well, I'll probably get into it another time, but at the time I was in a separate boys and girls class in school, and so I didn't have a lot of experience talking to the opposite gender, and I didn't really know how to, but texting was a good like form to hide behind, right? And
Oh yeah.
so I text these girls in my class, and 13, 14, 15 years old, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade. And until I went to camp, actually, a co ed camp, I really had no, I would just face the most, the most intense, um, I don't know what the word is. I mean, definitely shyness, but I just didn't know what to do with myself socially. I mean, I would stutter. I wouldn't know whether to introduce myself as Ephraim or Effie. I would just end up like stuttering a whole bunch and not making any sense. Or, I wouldn't.
Oh man,
Yeah, it was.
I'd love to
Yeah,
see that,
dude,
dude. That
it's
would be like
so brutal.
that'd be great to witness. I'd love to
So
witness something
brutal.
like that.
It's so terrible. And I mean, it took me. And then again, I went to our alma mater. Is that what you call it? Moshava, Wisconsin, and that's what I got my first little bit of exposure to being a normal human being. But imagine that it was like that with everyone. Imagine it was like that with guys and girls and adults and teenagers and everyone just spent their lives behind this texting wall and behind this wall of miscommunication or not being able to look at someone in the eye and say something confrontational, or how to look someone in the eye and say something that is not necessarily pleasant or easy, but so important to do.
Right. Yeah, I think just to give you a little bit of companionship, I think we were all like that, dude. I was like that for sure. My texting game was definitely much better than my
Wait, I'm
verbal
sorry,
game.
you cut off one more time.
I said I think we
I'm
were all
sorry,
like that.
you literally just cut out for that sentence.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello?
I hear you now,
Yep.
yeah.
Hello? Okay, I was saying I
Yeah.
think we were all like that, and that my texting game was way above my verbal game. At some point, I think it caught up, and I was able to communicate better with girls. But just
You had to
I in
practice,
you.
right? I mean, you had to work on it. Like these are not.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been in co-ed schools my whole life also.
Okay.
So I think I had an advantage. And when I went to yeshiva, it was my first time being in an all guys environment.
Hmm.
And I realized like there was a clear difference between the guys in the yeshiva that went to a co-ed school versus the guys that were in all boys school. And I actually asked the Rosh Yeshiva, and I was like, "Do you notice a difference between your students that come in here who come from a co-ed background versus the ones that don't?" And he said, "Yep, the ones that come in from a co-ed background are a lot more mature." And I was like, "Wow, I can't believe you just said
Yeah.
that." And it was so true. Like you looked around, you're just like, "Yeah, these guys like I don't know what it was. I don't know what the psychology is behind it, but it was definitely apparent."
Well, I could tell you for sure, as having been to both within the first within with it while I was in high school, right? I spent 2 years, one in a co-ed school and one in not. Um, you you learn to filter yourself or to enhance the quality of your behavior or interactions when there are girls around that you're trying to impress and please. So you kind of start by like you don't want to smell like this the school that I was in, all boys school, constantly smelled like a gym locker room. And like no knock on the place, I mean, but you put 300 guys in the school and you have them run, and you got to have them work out and play hockey and do whatever, and play hockey, basketball, work out, and they're not really going to care whether they stink because there's just a bunch of dudes around them, but you're not going to make a stupid joke where you sound like like a douchebag in front of a class full of girls because you don't want the girls to be disappointed in you, and so
Right.
like there was an immediate rectification of everything about me when I switched from one school to the next, and probably for the better. But I did lose a certain sense of innocence in being that. I wasn't even particularly self-aware, and then I became aware of how my hair looks in the morning when I wake up, or how I smell, or or what clothes I was wearing, or how I did on a test, or whether the thing I said in class was funny or stupid or embarrassing, or I mean, I could imagine that that does kind of shoot forward the maturity process a little bit, especially by the time
Right.
you get to 17 or 18.
Right. It's true.
But yeah, I think that people to people skills. Like I used to be when I first started working with my dad, I was afraid to answer the phone. So if I were to generate a lead, if I were to get a customer to call me, if I were to get someone on eBay that was interested in one of my products, or if anything like that, someone was calling the business phone and my dad was on the other line, I would pick up and ask them to hold, and I would get this terrible anxiety, like in my chest, and I just didn't know how to talk to people. And then the more I practiced, the more I realized that people are just people, and not only people just people, but if someone's calling to ask something or complain, they're probably also a little bit uncomfortable calling a customer service line and trying to get someone on the phone. I mean, that's the way that I would make myself feel a little better about it, was that the person on the other end of the line is probably not so different than you are right now. Um, but I used to be, but the only, it just took a couple of months of practice of just, calling Home Depot and speaking to the customer service representative, calling Target, of answering a customer, and then learning, by the way, that like if I was dealing with a customer and it was a question that I didn't know the answer to say, I'm so sorry, I actually don't know, but let me take your information down, I'll find out and I'll call you back. Like that's such a valuable skill. And I didn't have any of this. And if you're not in that kind of position where you're a salesperson that has to be on the phone all day, then I don't
Right.
know how people get that, you know?
Well, I think a big part of it, at least for me, I've noticed because I've been in a few like different like sales, marketing, customer support roles, and the one thing I could say is that if you have knowledge in the product or service that you're offering, people will view you as an authority, and it makes it much easier to sell. You can make people feel a lot more comfortable with you if you illustrate that you know more than them, or that you're an authority on the topic.
Yeah. But on the flip side, which I think is important to also consider, is that you become a much more reliable source when you admit that you don't know and then you find out. I mean, you can't sound like an idiot and then you can't know, you can't not know,
Yeah, no, I
anything,
know that
but I've,
they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah, of
yeah,
course. No, I'm not saying that you should like BS your way through an answer that you don't know. Just saying in general, like what helped me, when you first start a new job, for example, and you're picking up the phone or someone calls in, everyone's gonna have that knot in their chest because they don't know what's gonna happen. They don't know where the conversation's gonna go. But if you're confident in that no matter which direction this conversation is going to go, I've been there and I know what to answer. It's kind of like we're talking about earlier. Like you don't even have to use a part of your brain for like analytical skills or
that's right.
analytical.
Full circle.
Yeah, it just comes out because like yeah, I've been there, I've done that. It's like if you would ask me like how do I kick a ball, I could explain to you how I kick a ball the same way I could explain to you how to, I don't know, get a vacation rental license.
Yeah,
Free plug. Um, but I wanted to ask your opinion on something that's going to completely shift gears here,
sure.
if you don't
I
mind.
love that.
Do you think Joe Biden's alive?
Do I think he's alive? Oh man. So some context over here. By the way, Shu just walked in. Some context over here. I told you a couple of months back, I think, that I was completely addicted to Twitter, or to X, right? And I was like, it's so not good for my mental health. Do you remember I told you that? Because I was like,
Yeah.
you're constantly being flooded with like the craziest things, and some things are crazier than others, and some things make more sense, and some things are less, and also the algorithm. Like my algorithm doesn't really know what to do with me because I keep on engaging in different, you know, types of posts and different types of people, and so they can't really tell whether I'm like a libertarian or a conservative or a liberal because I kind of have people I follow, I engage with all over that spectrum. But yeah, dude. So then, when did you first download Twitter or X?
The night Trump got shot. So when was that? Saturday night, like last week,
Yeah,
a week ago, maybe 8 or 9 days ago. I first got it, and I was like, I need to know what people are saying.
yeah, dude.
And a guy I learn with in the community has it, and he's not like into social media at all. But he made a great point. And he's like, Twitter is the source of news. Like that is the source. When you listen to like Fox or CNN or whatever, MSNBC, they're reporting on news that usually is sometimes is a tweet, right?
Sure.
It's like no way, breaking news. This person tweeted this. So imagine you're going to the source and you're seeing it firsthand. You're seeing who interacted it with it. You're seeing immediately once it comes out, you get to see it before there's a spin and there's a narrative on it. So I was like, you know what, that's super interesting. And I got it. I'm like, there are so many people that are like breaking news days before the news cycle even gets to it. And it's
Days,
like,
dude.
and
Dude, I read news
you're
articles.
following it in real time, and it's really, it's honestly, it's
Yeah.
incredible. It really is. I'm so late to the game.
No, well, yeah, but yeah, you're a little late to the game, but I don't think there's any late to the game because I think once you're on it, you're just as up to speed as anyone else is for the most part. But but that's part of the overwhelming nature of it too. Is the fact that so much is breaking all the time, and I believe when I look, there's two things I look for when I look for news. I look for a new narrative and perspective. And then obviously you try to get as much truth as you can get, but either people are going to be lying or people are going to be wrong. It's going to be one or the other for the most part, right? So, for example, I don't consider a trustworthy news station to be like either Fox or CNN or whatever it is, because they've got people telling them what you can say and what you can't say, and corporate sponsors and all that other stuff that are so blatant and and like you could always tell that someone's like playing a game where they'll like say 60% of something, but they can't go the last 40% because they don't want the other person to get, they don't want the person that's paying the bill to get upset or for them to get fired. So you're obviously not going to get the full story from them. And then you have the people that are exposing new narratives that are like the Twitter reporters, where they're not always they're definitely not always right, but they do provide.
That's news in general, I think. I think news in general
Yeah,
is prone to that.
well, you hope so, right? But the news became pretty uniform in the last bunch of years, and I mean, I guess in the last couple of years since the rise of podcasts, it's been kind of breaking up a lot more. But for until let's say 2021, 2022, everything was pretty much the same. Everyone was getting the news from the same three or four forums, and it was just a question of how you're going to spin a story to a left or right leaning crowd. But it was the same stories for the most part. At Twitter, you get the greatest breaking coverages and the craziest breaking news, and they provide you with all these new perspectives and potential stories, and you're not sure which ones to rabbit hole down and which ones not to. And
Right.
then some of them turn out to be
So
great, and some of them turn out to be, someone pulled a fire
can I
alarm for
tell
no
you my
reason.
problem?
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you my problem. So I'm a pretty big skeptic. Like I don't fall into conspiracy theories, and like I usually reject things that I can't like. If you told me like there's an elite group of people that are running the world, like it's hard for me to get behind that.
Hmm.
And there are some people that can easily get behind it, and for whatever reasons they do, and I can understand why, but I that's just not me. So when I downloaded Twitter, I was like ready to sort of brush off all these narratives that were going to be thrown my way. Um, but but I'm starting to read these things, and I'm like, no way,
Right.
no
So
way.
so
Like,
take me
you
so
know,
take me through take me through this Biden thing.
I'll give you an example. Like I can't take you through the whole thing because like there's so many moving pieces that I probably can't like remember them all. But like just the fact that he got COVID immediately after this attempted assassination attempt, right?
Hmm.
And the CIA director was just on the hearing. She just had her
That
hearing
was a
where
mess of
she
a
didn't
hearing. That was
answer
crazy.
mess, right? She didn't answer anything, so it looks really obscure. She couldn't answer a thing. Like why didn't someone stop him from going on the roof? Why was
By
he
the way,
flying the
sorry,
drone? Just
before you go ahead with any additional points, just the fact that we have Twitter, that if we didn't have Twitter, those recordings, those videos would never have gone out to any other news station. So, like, just the fact that Twitter, like you think that Fox or CNN or any of those places would have posted the videos of that breakdown of the meeting? I really doubt it. Um,
Which meeting? Yeah, the
the hearing,
hearing?
I mean, yeah, I totally doubt it. And if not for Twitter, I bet most people would never have even seen those video clips from the hearing.
Oh yeah, true, could be. But yeah, so then there's like, okay, so there's attempted assassination, a hearing that goes absolutely like bonkers, like no answers. Everyone's like super pissed off. No one knows what's going on or how there can be such a big screw up. The president immediately gets COVID. Like who gets COVID anymore? And on top of that, when it's announced that he gets COVID, he doesn't like isolate immediately. He's not wearing a mask. He's like actually around people. And then he gets put into like into literally into hiding. Like no one has seen the president in 5 or 6 days now, I think, until he made a phone call last night or 2 nights ago, I forget, into Kamala Harris's campaign, where she almost slips up and says, "You're on record, you're on the phone." Like and people started doing on so this is the where it gets interesting like with Twitter because I would never know this. But I noticed that people were like doing they were like it's kind of weird that we haven't seen the president. There's no photo op when he like
Steph
handed
Theron,
in his
yeah.
resignation. So we don't even know if it was him who wrote it. And then it has a signature on the bottom where he underlines his signature. And people were looking at his past executive orders where he signs it at the bottom, and none of them have an underlining
Right.
on the bottom of it. So you're just like, dude, what the hell is going on?
Yes.
And this is besides for the fact that, I listened to a Rogan clip on this. Besides for the fact that the shooter was on top of a building that's owned by a BlackRock owned company, and he was in a BlackRock commercial 2 years ago, which is weird. I'm not going to go into conclusions, but again, it's like adds flavor to the story. All of this, all I'm saying is that it's weird, and I feel like I joined I either joined Twitter too early or just at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. So I the other thing that I feel is actually wrong with today's society in general. Um, one second. Is that I think that I think anyone can make a really good conspiracy case for almost anything with the amount of details and footage that's available all the time now, right? So you could take you could slow down a video and then find some kind of pattern and then find another pattern and another video and then take an instance of someone's life where they said a sentence or two sentences, and then connect it with what that pattern is going to be. And then you could say, oh, look at that, they're part of the deep state, because of this. And and on one hand, it allows us to kind of solve mysteries or solve these problems, in a lot more dynamic and effective way. But on the other hand, it also allows us to kind of find these patterns wherever we choose to look for them. Like people are pattern seeking animals, and we try to find patterns and things that either are connected or aren't connected, but we convince ourselves are connected. And I think that Twitter is filled with both of them, and you have to have a discerning eye. I don't.
Well,
Yeah,
I think what makes me special, no, what makes me feel like I'm not your typical conspiracy theorist is that I I could collect all this information in my brain and still not jump to a conclusion of like, so therefore there are these puppet masters pulling all the strings. Like to me, I can stop at just this is weird and like I would hope to get some answers one day, but I'm not ready to go full on there are Jews running the world shooting space lasers type of thing.
yeah, right. But it's not. But if someone wanted to get there, you could. Someone if someone wanted to get there, they could compile these videos and these clips, especially with ChatGPT and especially the amount of computing that we have available, which just in a sidebar, some Chabad guys, if I was just with over the weekend. He was saying that Chabad just made a ChatGPT, implemented some kind of AI where every single picture that they're with the Rebbe,
Yeah.
that it immediately searches the archives, and so a lot of people are finding pictures of themselves with the Rebbe, and they're finding pictures of their family or their friends, And
Yeah, my family just did
yeah, yeah, and everyone is super excited about it, and it shows that we have and the amount of computing that we have available is breathtaking. But it also lets us come up with these patterns that again don't necessarily exist, and we have to look for we have to have we need even more of a discerning eye than ever before. And I don't know, I have a little bit of a hard time believing that Biden is dead. Um,
it.
I I wouldn't rule it out, but if you told me, I'll bet you $100 he's dead right now, I don't know that I would put $100 on the table for it. Um,
Really, that's pretty low stakes.
yeah, but the point is, like, that's how not confident I am in this narrative. Like, yeah, a lot of weird things are happening, a lot doesn't line up. Um, a lot doesn't make sense, and a lot of like you said, it is weird. He hasn't been in public. It's weird that, but you know what? The whole freaking presidency has been goofy, in this kind of weird way. Very few conferences, very little elaboration on any kind of questions or anything anyone is spectating about. And so at the end of the day, like, I mean, yeah, maybe he's dead. Maybe, we'll find out in 50 years or 100 years or 10 years that, there was a lot more squirrely things going on than we thought for the last 4 years. But I, I wouldn't be surprised, but I certainly wouldn't bet on the fact that that the guy is not alive.
Mm.
I don't know. What do you
Uh,
think? Are you all in on that?
no, no, I don't think he's. I actually don't think he's dead. I actually don't think he's
You
dead.
don't think he's dead? That's good.
But I just think it's super. It's just weird,
It is weird.
and
The whole thing is
you do
weird.
these things that you do these things that are like objectively weird,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to come from a point of like a nonpartisan take over here. Why don't you just at least a photo op? At least take a photo
Yeah.
of you like signing this thing or a video, a quick video, something. It's just so weird. And then the Democratic Party rolls out that Kamala Harris is their nominee and that she's going to save democracy.
Yeah. No.
That's
No.
like
No.
the
No. No.
biggest
Whatever you want to. Yeah.
proxy.
Yeah. Whatever you want to say. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Um, but I don't really know like what else that there would be that you can do. Like I don't know. I don't have any answers. I don't know. I think the whole thing is weird, but I don't think that this one particular event is any stranger than anything that's happened in the last 4 years. Is my point. You know. Uh,
Really?
yeah.
Maybe I haven't been on Twitter long enough. This is the type of stuff that happens.
Yeah, yeah. You
No,
hear crazy things
I,
all
I,
over even the Jeffrey Epstein files. Is there any reason why this information is still private for, or being blocked to the public? Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, that all happened like last year, and we kind of just forget about, we kind of just push it off to the side and forget about it, and hope that we have a short memory, which we do. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't, if people remember, then they remember. But they're conspiracy theorists, so who cares? And if people don't remember, then great, you keep on doing whatever it is you want. You know.
yeah, man. That's.
Although
I'm just.
I would like to give people an opportunity to be charitable with their perspective, with their story, and try to see how things, like how it would make sense, like what do you believe? Like justify to me what your train of thought is and explain it to me. Maybe I'm missing something,
On what? On what part of
anything,
it?
on anything. Meaning, I don't. I think that everyone lives in such a gotcha type of mentality. Oh, gotcha, you're lying. Gotcha, you're really a crook. Gotcha, you're really, this, and this. You don't really mean this. You said this, but it's not really true because of this and this. But you said when you're 30 or 20 or 5, and and everything is always gotcha. And I don't think we're very charitable with people to, especially on social media. And you'll notice this actually as you're on Twitter more. You'll watch like a podcast, and then you'll watch a clip of the podcast from a journalist, and you'll notice that they'll cut the clip on Twitter to seem um, much much more dramatic than it was in real life, or in the flow of the conversation. So imagine someone cutting 2 minutes of our conversation and putting it on Twitter, be like, you see, like, Guy and Ephraim
Right.
Hirschman think that that everything is a conspiracy theory, and that Biden's dead, and like maybe maybe not, I don't know, but the fact that people just took that clip out of context of 2 minutes, put on Twitter, now everyone thinks that, and that's the breaking news the world sees.
Right. Well, this I think is different because we're seeing a story unfold before our eyes. So like in in contrast to the Epstein stuff was it, it wasn't like a series of different events that were all correlated into one bigger picture story. That was like one story that might have been unfolding. But this is so many separate pieces that are coming together and painting this really big, it seems like a big picture thing that people are breaking news left and right, and you're just like, whoa, this thing happened, and then that happened, and they must be connected. I don't know. I see a distinction.
Yeah. I get. I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, it's not a perfect example, but the point. Yeah, I hear. I hear. Although the Epstein thing is
Also,
also. I mean, it should have. It should not be going on for as long as it has. And the fact that it keeps on getting strong. Strung out for longer and longer and longer, it just leaves lower and lower chance of anything happening. Because then you say, oh well, that
right.
happened 15 years ago. What are we talking about it now? Oh, what happened? That happened 30 years ago. And these witnesses. I mean, how reliable are these girls anyway? And like you could say all these crazy, terrible things. And it, and the gap in response and time almost allows people an opportunity to say things and do things they'd never dream of if this was in the early 2000s when this is happening. And it
Does that does that bother you, by the way, the fact that these things get pushed under the rug and that like
and then by the time
we
they're
probably
revisited, they're irrelevant. I don't think.
they're irrelevant or they just don't get revisited and we never know. And it's always a conspiracy, like Kennedy assassination or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it bothers me. It doesn't bother me on a regular basis. Like it doesn't, like I'm not just like, mind your own business and hanging out in my backyard and I can't believe they didn't release Kennedy documents yet. Like I don't know, it doesn't bother me like that.
Right.
But
No.
but it gives me,
Yeah,
but it
but
gives me.
you like
I definitely, I have practically no faith in, unfortunately, in any kind of corporate or government entity at this point. Like I don't think that they act in the people's best interest by any stretch of the imagination. And what the people's best interest is, like I think that it's funny. I have certain friends that are left leaning. I have certain friends that are right leaning. And I think as of a couple of years ago, I don't think it's been the same thing since COVID, but before COVID, if you were to ask someone a question, say about like homelessness, like the general response would be, "It's terrible that people are homeless. We don't want homeless people in this country. How do we? What's the way to fix it?" And then the responses on left and right would be um, would be different, right? And you say, okay, well, I think we should have a government program for them. I think we should have mental health institutions built, or homeless shelters, or we need more money, tax money to go to this, or not, whatever it is. But everyone is trying to get, everyone agreed that the problem existed. They want to solve the problem. They want us to be in a better place, and the way that you want to go about solving it is different. I don't think that we have that anymore. I don't even think that we can even agree that the problems that we want to deal with are problems that are,
right.
that the left and the right can even just sit down and be like, this is important and this isn't, this, and we want to solve it. You can't even agree on the terms of what's important or not, and that makes, and I don't think that's an accident. And then also, but that to go hand in hand with that, if you have someone in representing, the left, or you have someone representing the right, we're not even necessarily going to get what's best for everyone with based on those representatives. So if you have Biden or you have Trump, but they can't come to terms with the fact that mental health is is probably one of the leading causes, I would imagine, behind homelessness. If they can't agree, or they can't agree that homelessness is a problem, then how are you going to solve it? How are you going to fix it? So I don't think that the media, I don't think that the news, I don't think that the government is interested in kind of trying to represent what's best for the people, um, anymore. So that bothers me a lot more than, like, do I think that that they'll just push something under the rug until we forget about it? It doesn't surprise me that they do that, because they,
You're saying we're even more far gone than that.
yeah, dude, I think we're way past that. Unfortunately, I think we got to that point with the hippie movement. Some late '60s. I think we were started to get to that point where you know, it became more about maintaining power for the authorities than about representing what was best for the people and what could have been a new way forward into the future with the way that we perceive, you know, success, reality, what's important for, what's the important way and the healthiest way for people to live. And once the authorities shut that down in the late '60s, I don't know that we ever found our soul like that again. There were little bits and pieces every now and then, but I think overall it's been, on a human level, kind of just a downward trajectory for the rest of the country, I think. Oh boy! But I also I also did that. The reason why I'm doing this podcast is to try to bring positive and more and less divisive conversation, and more things that we could, like, fundamentally agree on,
Come together,
come
baby.
together. And so, I mean, yeah, we already know that there's lack of trust. You already know that there's a lot of negative things, but so what can you do about it? And I think one of the things that you do about it is create a very positive, try to create the most positive environment that you can. Unfortunately, you don't have free Grateful Dead concerts happening in the park for anyone that wants to come just hang out and have a good time. But I went to, and I don't know how much time you have left, but I went to Wrigley Field for the first time, in Chicago with my dad, and we were just there for the weekend, and we went on a 1 o'clock Friday game, and I'm not a big baseball fan, neither is my dad. We went for a good time. We hung out, took an edible, and and then at the end of the game, they have a little splash pad set up for kids, and they had a local band playing a couple of cover songs, and and people were just hanging out, and there was just this general feeling of well-being and happiness, and that was very tangible, and just like general warmth for one another in the air. Like, you'd look at someone and it wasn't weird to just, like, smile, and just be like, have a good day, hope you're having fun, or like someone makes a comment about a kid getting splashed in the face, or someone trips and you help them up. And, like, I think that we have a lot of potential to come together in a really healthy way. But not everyone gets to go to baseball games at 1 o'clock on Fridays, so maybe some media they consume could be positive. Maybe they listen to friends talk and they say, yeah, this is great. I should do this more often. I should talk to more friends. I
Yeah.
should have real conversations.
Also, like going back to what we spoke about a little bit earlier, that like we're so used to being behind our phone and a profile picture and communicating in that way. I think one way to help that is to go outside and actually have real conversations with people, because I think that when you even with people that you disagree with, you won't you won't hate them the way that you hate their profile on Twitter or TikTok. You know
Right.
what I mean? You'll just disagree with them like you disagree with anyone in a normal way. But when you're interacting with people on social media and behind a phone or whatever it is, or even in your thoughts, when you hear someone go on TV and say something ridiculous that you disagree with, your thoughts and the way that you interact with these people will be a lot more aggressive, as opposed to if you had an interaction with them in person. I don't think it would be that same way. It'd probably be much more tame
For
than what you would
sure,
otherwise.
dude. Absolutely. I I told I have my wife was telling me that she had a friend that was going through a little bit of a hard time with her husband. They were, newlyweds within the first year of their marriage, and she found out something about her husband that bothered her, and shocker, and and she's like, I don't, and she's like, I don't know. She's so upset. How's she gonna get over it? And I was like, well, I believe that like when we look at people, we have this incomplete little picture or painting of them, and as you get to know them, you notice more details or more, the picture becomes a little bit more nuanced, but it's not that things are necessarily lost and found, but that there's just different aspects to the people and different aspects to, to who people are, right? So if you meet someone in the street, or I'm sitting in a brewery and I'm talking to a guy and we talk about our favorite beers that we have and we talk about, yeah, I've been to this brewery in Tampa and this one in Miami and this one in Georgia, and then he mentions, yeah, and stupid Trump and his stupid politics, or stupid Biden and his stupid politics, or RFK's a nut, and at that point we've already established so much common ground that at that point it's not like this guy's just attacking me. This guy just said something that that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, and I'm like, and then I usually would just be polite and either yes them until they stop or just change the conversation, and then you go back to it, and it's so easy. Like that's all you really have to do. And who cares if someone doesn't agree with you? Like there's so much more to the picture of who that person is, that
Right.
there's so much more to focus on. And yeah, okay, fine. So you have this picture, and there's one part of the picture that you're not crazy about, So you focus on something else. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Right, there could be like a what?
Go ahead. What'd you say?
So there could be like there could be like a 90% overlap
For
in
sure.
similarity and common interests. But then there could be that 10% that you're like, what? You don't agree with me on this? But I feel like we just need to get over ourselves
We
sometimes and
definitely
just
need to get over
realize
ourselves. Yeah. Including
that
myself,
people are
dude.
allowed to have their, yeah, no, yeah, 100%. I think I'm talking to myself right now. Like, I just need to get over it. Like, if someone says that they're whatever, like pro Biden or whatever, they're a Democrat. I just like, who cares?
Yeah, do your
Like,
thing, man.
just go vote, and I'll vote my way, and like, what difference does it make? Okay, fine. Like, who cares?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that, yeah, and then at the end of the day, you could probably have a lot, like once you put that behind you, you open yourself up to a lot more positive experiences with the people too. You know, if I didn't talk to anyone that had any that if I didn't talk to anyone or have anything to do with anyone that had a differing opinion than me, then I wouldn't talk to anyone on this planet, dude. I mean, like I'm s- I'm so opinionated. I'm so nuanced. I mean, there's a lot that I don't care. Like I'm generally confident enough that I don't really care what other people think, and I don't look at it like a threat on my own perspective, But you can't go. You could if you want, and you'll be miserable. But it's impossible to be happy and or to be content with your life and your relationships, and fly off the handle every time someone disagrees with anything anything you believe.
Right. You don't want to be around people who only will agree with you.
Oh, that sucks, dude. Those yes men, or yes, the people they just like no matter what you say, like, yeah, 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 yeah. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it can't be good. I mean, just practically speaking, that can't be good for you. You don't want to have those people in your life that are just like, yeah, for sure, like, or don't challenge your perspective, or don't push you to think
It's
differently.
not good for anyone, dude. It's not good for anyone. It's not
Yeah.
good for the recipient. It's not good for the person that's actually doing it. It's not good for anyone. Um, yeah, I mean, we don't. Part of what the way that at least that I learned is that I can't I learn by hearing new things, and it could be something I initially agree with or disagree with, um, and then I have to sit on it for a little bit, and then sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't, but at least I know that it exists, and I add that level of knowledge to my overall being. It makes it a lot more productive.
100%.
All right, dude. Let's wrap it here then. I think we got over an hour over here, right? Is the longest one we did.
I know.
I mean, you have to sort through and make sure that all this content wasn't staticky the entire time. But I'm gonna listen back.
Yeah,
Uh,
get your editor on that.
yeah, that's right, dude. You want to edit it? I don't have an editor. All right, dude. I appreciate you having on, man. I hope you had fun.
Uh, for sure,
Catch you
brother. Take
later.
care. Bye.
Bye.